Welcome to Pom Vida Invigorators, and today we have a really awesome guest. We have Ilana Wiles, who is a blogger, influencer, content creator, wearer of many hats, and she can explain a little bit in more detail what exactly she is responsible for on the internet that you've probably already seen.
Hi. I started as I had a blog called MommyShorts. I still have a blog called MommyShorts, and that was sort of, I think, before people were using like their social media platforms as like their main platforms.
Yeah.
So it used to be like everything would drive traffic to the blog, but now, and there was like pre-Instagram.
Yeah.
Now I feel like so much of what I do is about Instagram, just because that's like where everybody is. It's much harder to get people to
actually go read a blog.
Yes. Even me, I notice I do that too. Like there are things that I used to check every single day that now I'm like once a week I'm like, oh, I wonder what's going on over there.
Word.
Yeah. So so Instagram has become like a really big focus of mine. So at MommyShorts is like my personal account. Then I have at Average Parent Problems, which is more of my meme account. I just recently started MommyShorts Squad, which is really taking off, which is awesome. That's more of like featuring all different moms and some of more bigger issues that maybe like I didn't like how everything sort of related directly to my children on my personal account. So this is something I can grow separate of them.
Yeah, the wider world of like politics, other parent, lives and paths.
There's so many like interesting stories to tell. I almost like there was a couple people that compared some of the things that I was doing, which is the hugest compliment, was to Humans of New York, but sort of more from like a parenting perspective. I know, I was like, okay, I'll take it. But it's not all that. It's like some is featuring moms, and then some is like highlighting issues of mine. Then it's also some humorous. I always like to have humorous content in there.
Yes.
We should never take ourselves too seriously.
I agree. So at this point, you are like covering several different angles, and you have lots of clout and influence and followers on social media. But how did you, and at this point in 2019, that seems somewhat normal, and that's like a real career path and a legitimized thing. Yeah. But when you first started this, how did you come into this world, and did you have to leave another job in order to come to this, and how did you make those decisions, and how did you convince yourself that was the right thing to do?
I feel like part of it was very accidental and part of it was very strategic. I like to give myself some credit. I don't want to say it's all luck, but there was obviously a lot of luck to it. I got laid off from my job, number one, so I was a new mom. I just had Mazzy, so this is 9 years ago. And right after I came back from maternity leave, I got laid off. So that was a awful event. I'd been at that job for 15 years, and I was like, I considered myself to be a pretty I was a senior vice president, and I was a creative director. I thought I had set myself up to have this position where I could sort of make choices about if I needed to stay late or stay the weekend. I've thought okay, now I'm in the position where I can kind of make those calls.
Yeah, finally, that you have.
Right, but no, that's not how it worked out.
You're not getting that flexibility.
Right. So, and can I just say that I tried so hard to not have. I had to go to Vancouver for 10 days, but the idea of leaving Mazzy when I was still breastfeeding and she was only a few months old, so I ended up taking her and my mother.
Oh my gosh.
To Vancouver for 10 days while I was on the shoot.
Which is such commitment.
It's being on a shoot itself is very, very intense, and then on top of that, you're out all day, doing all the stuff with the client and and shooting the actual commercial, and it's a very intense, high pressure situation. And then coming home and my mom just being here, and you're and breastfeeding all night, and we're in a strange place, and so in my head I was this is hard, but I'm Superwoman. But I guess my company,
But the best part is that all ended up being a blessing in disguise in an enormous way.
For sure, yeah.
It sounds like. So that was kind of your catalyst and push was, okay, I am without a job. But still, most people would not have the like the bandwidth or the urge to say, well, so let me just like get out of my comfort zone and go in a different direction. Like that still takes guts.
Well, it wasn't like immediately where I was like, okay, so I'm going to do this complete 180 and try something new that's like never been done before or whatever. It was more that because I worked in advertising, I was hearing a lot about the mom blogging space, and I feel like it was always coming up at meetings as just like the chatter online, and we have to pay attention to the mom blogs, and it seemed like it was sort of gaining in importance to me. I don't think anyone was paying mom bloggers at the time. It was more like, oh, we'll send them free product, and they'll, you know, hopefully they'll post about it and say good things. And it was also, I think, most mom bloggers at that time were more stay-at-home moms, maybe like more from, you know, like more from the middle of the country. You know, like when I was looking for, okay, who's a mom blog that's like a working New York City mom, that like I couldn't find anything like that.
No, full disclosure, I was a mom blogger at the same time.
Oh,
I was a stay-at-home mom blogger in New York City and could not cut it, but I was doing the same thing. I got like, you know, free flavored water for my son's birthday party or something. And I was like, this isn't paying any bills. Like, this is really cool, but that's not paying for anything.
So in my head, I was thinking this is going to become a more and more important space. And it seemed to me like anybody that was getting ahead in advertising had experience in some other side thing. It was like they went away and like made movies, or they did, you know, and then came back and was like, you know, now had sort of like a more worldly point of view. So I'm like, maybe the mom blogging space will be this place that I can really like figure out, and that will end up being an advantage to me to get my next advertising job. The other part of that is that I was doing mostly traditional advertising at the time, so I had no digital experience. So I was like, this is going to be a way for me to like, it was almost like one of the things I wanted was just like the experience of building a website so that I could put that in my portfolio. So I did. I like put the, you know, I screenshot it. MommyShorts. I made a website. Look, I can do digital. You know? And so really, I really started it because I thought it would be important in the advertising world at some point, and that was what was going to get me a better advertising job. I did not know that it would like become so important that I didn't need an advertising job.
So when did that switch happen? Like when did that moment come where you realized like, oh wait, I'm not building MommyShorts to help me get ahead in advertising. I actually am just building MommyShorts and whatever that becomes. Like how did that switch?
So that was about 3 years in. And that whole time I was like I was freelancing the whole time. I was actually permalancing for like this one specific company. And I was doing it at night. And then my husband kind of said and at that point, like I had started making money off of it, and it was interesting because then it was like I was starting to weigh what I could make off of a post versus what I could make like on it, like because we paid a day rate as freelancing. So like, and
which one was more?
So it started to be that the post was more. So that was an interesting, you know, interesting transition. It puts everything in perspective. And then on top of that, because I was working on a lot of like mom focused brands, like it was a lot of baby brands. It was like almost like the ideas that I was coming up with for the agencies that I was working with, and the ideas that I could kind of execute on my own for my blog started to be more and more similar. And then I sort of realized that it's like if you're working for a company and you present them an idea and they're presenting that to the client, they own that. Like you can't go and do anything with it. So then I got to this place where like I remember coming up with this one idea and then thinking, do I present this or save this for myself? And that was sort of the moment that I realized, okay, then this isn't fair anymore. Like, you know, like this isn't the right thing for me to do. I also like, I think at that point I got offered more of like the big job I was looking for, and sort of recognized that I didn't think that was the more success. I didn't think that was the path that could lead to the biggest success anymore. I thought it was more potentially going on my own. So,
that's still, I feel like even because that must have been like around 2010.
I would say that was probably because the blog I started in 2010.
Okay, so like
probably around 2013, 2014 or something.
But so that's still, even though it was not that long ago,
yeah,
I still feel like we didn't have the term influencer yet. We didn't have, like, Instagram was not what it is now.
No.
So it's still, for you to kind of see, like, actually, I think because then it wasn't like a known fact the way somebody now could make that decision and be like, oh, I know that I could do much better doing social media work, doing blogging, influencer work than a traditional 9-to-5 job. But at that moment, you were still kind of on the cusp of, we all were on the cusp of not fully understanding what it could mean. So how did you just kind of have this gut feeling and you just kind of believed, like, I think I can make this work? And when you told people that you were going to make that decision over the like more sturdy, traditional job, were people supportive? Did they get it, or were you?
Yeah, I mean, I honestly felt like one of the biggest obstacles I had was I very much like I've always been a very career oriented person.
Yeah.
And I think for a lot now I feel like it's shifted, but even now I sort of have an issue with it. It was at that time it was very like people didn't really think you were doing a serious thing, even if I knew what I was making off of things.
Yeah.
Other people didn't know that. So I felt kind of like, oh, a lot of people must think Ilana's just doing this, like, she's just like blogging and sharing.
Like she's a millennial. Or
right? And even then, like millennials weren't.
No, nobody knew.
But I didn't like the feeling that people probably didn't think that what I was doing was a real job. And I still think that people think that sometimes, and that bothers me a lot. So I had to kind of get over that a little bit. But there was a couple factors that sort of made me make that leap. One is that I started obviously getting paid real money for things, and that was in part due to meeting someone that was also looking for a job she worked in partnerships with like big companies. And so I was like, could you sell partnerships for me the same way that you did for this hotel brand or this, whatever. And so while she was looking for a job, she started to do sales for me.
Oh, wow.
And was successful at it.
That's one of those moments of like, it is luck, right?
Yeah.
That you met somebody who did that and who had time to do that for you. But it's also the awareness of seeing those doors that you're like, that can work right now. Because I think you have to.
Yes, I don't think she was looking for that.
No,
at all.
It's not a normal path. Like you have to be in a mindset where you're thinking of paths and like you see opportunities that other people might not recognize as actually an opportunity to make a path.
Yeah.
So,
And at that point I was still doing freelance work, so I was still making an income that way. So it wasn't like I don't think I was taking a risk, and then when when she came on, and this was just she was basically doing it while she was looking for another job. And then there was someone that reached out to me. And so the big thing back then was that you didn't have all these social media companies or agencies that were looking to pay people to do campaigns on blogs or social media campaigns or anything like that. That wasn't even happening. So I had to sort of go out there. So every client that we worked with back then, I was coming to them saying like, this is what I love to do, and creating a whole campaign, and had to get them to buy into it. Yeah. So everything was sort of unique to me, which was, when I say that, I mean like the campaigns that I was running were uniquely mine. It wasn't like I was one piece of a larger campaign.
No, you were coming and saying, I have an advertising idea for your campaign idea.
Yes.
For you.
And some of the early things that I did, which was really fun actually, and sometimes I think I should do this again, was I did, so there was a brand. Can I say the brand?
Yeah.
So it's Healthy Mama, and it was like prenatal vitamins. And that was a job that was, they were looking to do a bunch of print and online ads. And they went to the agency that I used to freelance for and said, this is what we want to do. And they were kind of like, that agency was a much bigger agency. And they're like, we don't think it makes sense for you to hire us. It's going to be too much money. But the person that we would hire to freelance for us, you could just use her directly. And so they sort of passed on that client to me. And so they wanted to hire me to just do
a freelance advertising
job, which at the time, that was like, I was not interested. I'm like, that's not really where I want to focus my time. But I'm like, if I can somehow combine the freelance ad job with the platform that I have,
Yeah.
that would be really interesting to me because that would be something new.
Yeah.
So what I suggested was that I come up with the ad campaign. And usually when you do an ad campaign, it's like it's sort of like a template. So it's like there's 3 ads that sort of look similar and they have similar sounding headlines, but they're different, you know?
Yeah.
So I'm like, I'll come up with the 3 ads that you want to do, but I'll come up with 2 of them and then leave the 3rd headline blank, right? And then put it on the blog and ask my audience to write the 3rd headline. And it went like bonkers. Like people were so into it because it's all the vitamins that they had. It was like to deal with like all the pregnancy things that like women go through. So it was like gas and bloating and like it was
nausea,
like nausea. Yeah. So I'm trying to remember. I wish I could remember the exact. It was like the template for the headline was something like healthy mama can help you with this, but it can't help you with this, and it would be like
we can't help you with incontinence or
right. But they were written really funny.
Yeah.
And my readers they are also hilarious. I have some like this. I have like the smartest, funniest audience. Like they're super witty and amazing. So they came up with like the most hilarious headlines for this. And then I did like, a blog post where everybody got to vote on what they thought the funniest one. So I put like, okay, here's like my 30 favorite.
Yeah.
So it ended up, and then the one that won actually ran.
Oh, wow.
So it was like, they got like an ad campaign plus the whole blog contest, and I ended up doing that for Method as well.
Okay.
Method soap.
Yeah.
Which,
I remember that.
And so that was like sort of a way of combining the 2. So that was super fun.
And so and do you feel like after you started doing campaigns like that, like, do you feel like that was a switch where you were able to, when you were telling other people what you did, and you could kind of drop that, or like explain that they understood more, like, oh, you're really...
No. I don't think until very, very recently that like people, even like my closest friends, like started to understand that like I was like making a real living at this.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So it's that long. So that makes me think through all those years, and again, like you knew that you were making money and helping provide for your family and doing all this, so you knew it was legitimate.
Yeah.
But still, when you're dealing with something where every time you have to explain to people, you see like their eyes glaze over, or like you quizzically or judgmentally or just like, or condescendingly.
Right.
Like, how do you have to kind of build yourself up in a certain way to keep taking that, or do you just ignore it, or do you? I think,
it definitely helps. Like, well, it's like you almost have you have 2 audiences, right? It's like the real life people and the online people.
Yeah.
So I feel like online, I think people understood what I was doing.
Yeah.
Although not also. I think I always tried to sort of like dispel this notion that this is just something that I'm doing during nap time, or I've been very open about the fact that like
here's my office space.
Yes, I go to, and obviously I didn't have the office right away.
Yeah,
but it's like I go to an office, I have people that work for me. It's only like really 1 full-time employee, but it's still people that work for me.
Yeah.
And I have we have a nanny during the day, just like any other working parent. Like I felt like I was explaining that part of it a lot. And I think one was sort of like legitimize it to people that this is a real job, but also to show people who maybe are following me online and think like, oh my God, how is she doing all of this?
Yeah.
And it's like, because it's not just me. I'm not a stay-at-home mom who's doing something during nap time.
Yeah, amazing during nap time that you aren't doing. Like, you're barely doing laundry and I'm creating a blog.
Right.
It's legitimately a job and you're...
Yes, and I have the same health that any working parent would have.
Yeah. So, have you, among all that, like, still had any moments of forget anybody else, but like moments of self-doubt of like, what am I doing? Did I make the wrong decision? This is crazy. Like, I should have. I think stuck to normal. Like, what am I doing? Or like,
I think there's a few things that I think the way that you sort of like view what you're doing with your family and all that is very different when your kids are babies than when they start to get older.
Yeah.
So there was this definite moment where it was like my kids were leaving the baby stage, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, they're way past the baby stage
Yeah.
now, but even like, you know, Harlow's 6, so
Mhm.
it was like more recently that she was, and she's very small. So she seems like she's littler than she is. But you know, then we were sort of leaving all of that toddler stuff, you know, and all of a sudden I kind of got to this place where I was like, oh my God, like, what am I going to write about?
Yeah.
And will my kids even want to be a part of this? And I feel like there's all of these things that I would love to talk about, just because I like one of the like I've never been someone who like gives a ton of advice. I'm just sort of telling my experiences and then getting a lot of feedback. So like my readers have really like helped me a lot.
Yeah.
So there are so many things that come up now that I can't talk about because it's like an invasion of their privacy, and because like Mazzy reads it now, you know.
Yeah.
Whereas I think when you're talking about things like potty training and, you know, picky
you
eating,
feel more ownership over being like, no, I'm going through these trenches. Like I to like vent about it, and this is my But as soon as they're a being that has opinions and
but it's also like I feel like all that stuff is very universal.
Yeah.
So you don't feel like you're revealing anything
about your kid that
they
like pooped up their back. It's like
every kid poops
every
up their back.
4-month-old.
Right.
But yeah.
But now it's like everything's much more personal, and like the issues that we're dealing with, which I still think are pretty universal, but it still feels like an invasion of privacy.
Yeah.
And I know there are things that like, and it's not even just like that my kids will read it. It's like there are teachers that know what I do. There's like people like that my husband works with that know what I do. There's a lot of like my daughter's friends that, you know, that read it.
Or their parents.
She's reading my book right now, which is I keep waiting for her to get up to something that she's mad about, but she seems fine.
So you feel like navigating like the age of children and how to then continue on this path with older kids was the moment where you started to have the self-doubt of thinking.
Yes, it was like, is there an end date to how long I'm able to do this?
Yeah. And
if there is, like, is there something I can do to change that? Because I love what I do and I would love to continue doing it. Mm-hmm. I think you can parlay this into other things. I mean, I would think that probably if I wanted to get that advertising job, I also feel like I've been in advertising this whole time. You know, like the advertising has shifted towards this space. So I probably could get that advertising job if I wanted to. Do I want that? I'd much rather be able to continue what I'm doing. And I could be totally wrong about that. They could be like, are you kidding? Like, I've been doing this for years.
No, I think that is that you were at the forefront of understanding the role social media could play, the role anything online is going to play, digital, and like that you know, you're kind of one of the first influencers that way in a very organic way. But now that's fully paid. If you go to any social media marketing agency, they're like, okay, and here our influencer, like, you know, catalog basically. So it's. I
mean, I know my old partner, like she ended up working for like as a career director for Refinery 29. I can't speak. As a career director at Refinery 29. Oh, wow. So like that's she's not there anymore, but like. So, like, her path went there anyway.
It's definitely overlapping in ways right now.
But I would love to be sort of continuing what I'm doing in the same vein that I'm doing it. Yeah. So the answer to that I came up with, which was a little bit uncomfortable, but is sort of focusing it more on me than on the kids. Yeah. So that was, like, a big thing, was, like, starting to put myself more in the pictures and stuff, which is not something that I was, like, really comfortable with at first. Yeah. And then also that's when I created the MommyShorts squad account, which that's more focusing on moms
in general.
Yeah.
And so
but not just me, you know.
Yeah, but like that whole role and not just your family.
Yes.
Your kids. How obviously, like, if you're kind of in some way fighting, or not fighting, but like, you know, making sure that you find ways to keep on this path with this career. So I would assume that means that there are just things that come with it that are more enjoyable or better for your quality of life, or some, you know, that are somehow more rewarding to you than a more typical. Yeah. I don't want to say. I mean, this is typical too now, but like a more 9-to-5.
Right. Like, what are the advantages?
Yeah. Like, what is it that's drawing you to try to keep making this work?
Well, I mean, one of the great things that's happened since my kids have gotten older is that I feel like so much of like everything that happened with them was like at home, whereas now it's become a lot more about what we do and the places we go, and so like travel has become a big piece of it. And I've always loved traveling, and now that's become like a part of my job,
Yeah.
So it's like, we've worked with a lot of different tourism boards, like we've worked with Copenhagen, and we've worked with California a few times, like doing a bunch of different trips. So that's been like, or different hotels we've worked with, blanking at the moment, but like the Hyatt and the Ritz. So we've, so that's like, there's been like doors that have opened because my kids are now at the age where they can do these things, and it also becomes like the perfect topic.
Yeah.
Because it's like, if I'm not going to talk about them personally, saying like, oh, this is what we did in California, like that's great content. It's everything that I love. Like I love travel, and they love it too. They know that they get like a lot of perks. Yeah.
Big perk.
And then obviously like the flexibility and things like that is, I always like try and think about, I think there's advantages and disadvantages to having like your own business. And then this is, so I would say unique to like being a blogger, influencer, whatever it is that you want to call me, is that that me and the kids are getting like, there's a lot of free stuff or free trips or whatever, or not just free but paid, but or like a lot of events, like all the pop-up events and things like that.
All pop-up events, I feel like
yes, and my kids love that stuff. So like the fact that like as part of my job, I can pick up like my kids from school and take this some random
school, we're going to a candy pop-up,
right? Yes.
Unicorn pop-up,
Like the other day, we're doing a partnership with Huffy Bicycles. And so we all got new bikes, which was really fun. And then we did like a family bike ride. That's what they're promoting, is family bike rides. And we're like, oh my God, family bike rides are like the most fun thing to do.
Cool. Yeah.
So we like went down the East River Promenade, and it was great,
Yeah.
And then we just, and then they wanted to do one more with us, so we haven't launched it yet, but we did like a Brooklyn tour. Okay. So I picked up Mazzy from school, and it was just me and her like went to Brooklyn and did this whole tour of like Domino Park and stuff. And that's like my job.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing, is like to be able to get, I think in the beginning of Bloggerdom, there were just those perks, and they weren't even that good. They were just the perks, and now that you can actually get paid, make a living from it, and still get the fun perks, is like,
yes.
I mean,
no,
I would want to keep that going.
It's great, but just not to like, I don't want to like totally sugarcoat it, because I feel like it is a ton of work.
Yeah, it's so much work, and you have to make each one of those happen. I mean, at this point, I'm sure you also have brands coming to you, but especially in the beginning, like you said, you're knocking on doors. You're going to brands and saying like, "Hey, would you like to?"
But
do
even
this?
when you get those jobs, like with the it was much easier when someone's like, I want you to talk about like my diaper, and we're just using the diapers at home, and I write a post. Now it's like, we want you to talk about San Diego. You have to go to San Diego for these many days. You have to, it's a pretty intense trip. And by the way, during that whole trip, you're taking photos, you're doing Instagram stories, you're writing a blog post about your whole experience there. Yeah. Like the travel stuff is a lot of work. Yeah. And I feel like it's been an interesting thing, because I feel like the travel industry, the way they work with influencers has shifted a little bit. Because I think at the beginning it was like, we're giving you a free trip. Like, of course you'd want to do that. Yeah. And then I think once, the people who are good at this, or the people who get these kind of offers a lot, like they initially, it was like, yes, let's do that. And then you realize you're leaving your business for this many days. Yeah. You're completely focusing your time and energy on this one brand, for this entire time that you're away. You're delivering so much more than you've been contracted for. Like, there's so many times I'll go on a trip and they'll be like, your deliverables are 3 Instagrams,
Yeah. But meanwhile, you want to like do your entire
right. And then they end up getting like 12 and stories every day, and I'm gonna write a post about so it's like so I think that a lot of influencers have kind of learned that like it's not just a free trip. This is a ton of work that you have to get paid for. And that was a big moment for me. Was I got offered a trip to Hawaii, like a family trip, and it was like 4 days. And you get that thing in your inbox. You're like, oh, we're going. This is amazing. Yeah. And then my husband was like, okay, just need to think about this for a second. It's 4 days. Like almost like 2 of those days are basically like travel.
Yeah.
You're taking 2 kids to another time zone.
Yeah.
He's like, it's going to be hell, you know? And
Yeah.
you're like, guess you're right.
Yeah.
You know?
All right. Yeah.
So then we, you know, basically told them that we wouldn't be able to do it unless it was, so then it becomes like, are you paying me to do it? And then potentially maybe I'll put my family through hell.
Yeah.
I know it doesn't sound hellish to go to Hawaii, but
no,
it's hard. That's a really long plane flight from New York.
Yeah.
With two small children. They're bigger
Yeah.
now, but
your husband can't just take off work.
Yeah, exactly. That's the other thing too. Is like
Yeah.
a lot of the stuff that's coming up now. It's like, you know, I don't take him because he can't take off like that.
Yeah.
So we ultimately turned it down, you know,
Yeah.
and that was like a kind of a turning point where you're like, okay, we love this travel stuff and we really, really want to do it, but it's like you have to be paid for it.
Yeah, your time, your like quality of life, your life have to take precedence over that. So, which brings me to I guess the perks seem obvious, but you just did a really good job of explaining how it's actually complicated, even though it's exciting, but it's still real work and real time and effort. But are there any huge kind of burdens or, you know, robot like challenges that have come with choosing kind of being on the forefront of a new type of career or just working for yourself, like anything that has made it really more challenging than you anticipated?
I think one of the tough things is with, like, if I had a regular job and someone said I had to work the weekend or I had to stay late, it's very easy to be like, blame that on your boss, even like to your kids or for your own.
There's nothing I can do.
Right.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's like I'm gonna lose my job and then we're gonna lose all our money. You know, like if I don't like go to this late night meeting or whatever.
Yeah.
I think when it's your own business and your kids know it's your own business, it feels much more like your own decision. That I feel like I give in a lot on like I'm home. I come home, you know, on time all the time. I don't work the weekends, and I think I used to do it more. Like I used to always like stay up really late to write blog posts, or you know, find time to do stuff on the weekends.
Yeah.
And now I really don't do that. And I think a lot of it is, I think I probably should be. You know, there's definitely times where that seems necessary, and I think sometimes the people that I work with get frustrated because I'm just like, Harlow's parent gymnastics day, I'm gonna go, or like Harlow's upset and she really wants me to come with her to, you know, this birthday party or whatever. So like today I'm gonna pick them up from school to take them up for ice cream. It's the last day. I know I have working mom friends that they're not able to do that.
Yeah.
Should I be doing that? Like,
but yours is also like coming out of your personal income work time instead of like another business's time. So
yeah, and I don't know that my kids really understand. I was trying to explain that to Mazzy yesterday because she was saying you're really lucky because she was basically like, you can't ever lose your job or you get to make decisions or something.
I can make a lot less money if I don't put in the hours.
Yes, exactly. So I was telling her, I was trying to explain that most jobs there's a salary that you're going to make no matter what.
Yeah.
So whether you might have periods of downtime or periods that are really busy, but you're still making the same amount of money. For me, I'm doing a ton of work that's not paid at all.
Yeah.
So that I get those paid partnerships. So like you kind of don't know like how much money you're going to bring in month to month, and I have to be able to like keep up all of the editorial stuff to be able to get the paid partnerships.
Yeah.
So it's like
That's stressful.
It is. It's a little bit stressful.
Yeah.
So I was trying to explain that to her, and then she literally stopped me and she was like, "Mom," and I said, "Yeah." She goes, "I'm not listening to what you're saying."
Like, I'm so happy I'm taking off from
right.
editorial work time right now.
But I thought we were having this whole we were understanding each other. I had just, in fairness to her, I just bought her this like blue hair dye. She was really excited about, so she was looking at the box.
That's amazing. That's amazing. She's 9 now, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I have a fellow 9-year-old and almost 6-year-old, so they
similar.
Yeah. So what would you say out of all of the, whether it's, you know, out of forging this career and what that means to you as a woman, as a mom, all of that, or just even what aspect of your business would you say you're the most proud of and like excited that you've created?
I mean, I think there's a few things. I feel like I think number one, I'm just really proud to create the whole thing. Like the fact that this is my job and this is what I do, and I've sort of I feel like when I was laid off from my job, it was kind of like this feeling of like I thought that I could be a mom and a career person, and they're sort of telling me that I can't do that.
Yeah.
So the fact that I was able to not only like find this new career for myself, but sort of blend my family, like being with my family and like this career together, so that like I figured out a way to do both.
Yeah,
you know?
they told you couldn't have it all, and you're
right.
like, actually, hold my beer.
I mean, I didn't know that was coming,
yeah.
but I feel like there's a huge amount of like validation and like proving myself.
Yeah.
And I've always felt this my whole life, that I'm like this underdog, and I'm like always trying to prove myself. So I feel like what I'm doing now, and the fact that I guess it is so public, maybe it feeds into like a little bit of a the low self-esteem, like
building that, yeah.
I don't know, like from when I was like a kid, like feeling like that like
redeemed
a little bit. I don't know what the word is. I guess it's validated.
Yeah.
But I think so I think the fact that it's public, and I can kind of like be like, look, like I can be a mom and be a successful career person, and figure out a way to make that work for myself. I'm like really proud that I was able to create that.
Yeah.
Then I feel like I have to also say that I do think that there was luck involved too. I'm not going to give that completely to myself, but no, I'm totally proud of that. And I think also, growing up, I always felt like I was like good at all these random things, but I'm great at anything. And somehow this job combines all the things that I like photography and video editing and writing and like acting, like there are all these things that I just like, all creative things that I like doing, but I never knew
what
where
career is that.
Right, exactly, because it wasn't like I was an amazing actress or an amazing artist, but this sort of
kind of made a career.
Yeah.
I feel like what you just said is exactly kind of like the reason I'm doing all of these Invigorator interviews, and honestly what pushed me to start my own business and do this is the same exact feeling of like, I know I have these skills, these little weird like quirky talents or skills, but that don't match into a traditional job that already exists, that they're like, oh, well, obviously you should be whatever, like this.
Yes.
So to then kind of look at it, and especially as a mom, when you're trying to then figure out how to also like ever be home with your kids and figure all that out, to actually come up with some career path that maybe doesn't exist yet, but you're going to make happen.
Yeah.
Is like what is exciting to me, and what I think is available to more people than they realize right now. And that I want people to understand that you don't have to just be like, oh, well, I'm not super good at any career, so I guess I just have to like do whatever and just not really feel good about myself or feel like I'm shining, and so then to find something to create
sort of
your own, to create it
a whole bunch of
yourself.
aspects.
You don't have to just look at what already exists and try to fit in. You can create something that works for you, and it can be wildly successful.
And I feel like that was never available. Like we would have never known that anything like that existed when we were younger.
No,
so,
because you couldn't like.
No, you had to like pick or choose a path. But yeah, there's so many jobs out there, or so many businesses out there that are sort of just self-created.
Exactly. And I think more and more, obviously, like I think that it's become more possible to.
Yeah. I wonder, like I think about this a lot, that like I wonder if it's easier or harder to start something like being a blogger, influencer, or whatever. I feel like people would never start a blog now. It would be like more like an Instagram personality, whatever.
Yeah.
I wonder if it's easier to do that because there is like a known path, or if it's harder because the playing field is just so vast now that it's hard to like get your footing.
Way harder to jump into that world now, but I think that because of technology and how small the world has become, advances in like so many different areas, that people have more things to pull from to make their own career, not necessarily in like online realms, but like in anything. Like there's so much more that you can look up, like on the internet, that you can go travel and see. Like there's so many more options to kind of interlock to create.
We went
something.
to did like a tour of the wing recently, and I was thinking about that. So I went there with Allie, my content manager, and she's 24, and we went to the wing, and I was like looking around, seeing all the different businesses that are going on in there, and like, you know, that wasn't around when I started. My first thought was that like if that had been around when I first started, I would 100% have joined. You know, like just it's, you know, it's all these creative women like making their own thing, you know. And then I realized like when I was like 10 years ago or whatever, that there weren't businesses like that. No. You know what I mean? So like the wing would never have existed because there weren't all these like possibilities of all the different things you could do. Yeah, it's crazy.
I think maybe it's not that, I mean, because there were always plenty of people who started their own business and felt comfortable and had enough power and self-confidence to do so. I think the new wave is more women, people of color, things like that are feeling like, well, me too, why can't I? Like, I think I can also find something and create something.
I think even if your business doesn't have to do with social media, it's still social media that has helped create those kind of businesses.
And that, like, a more level playing field.
Yeah, like what would like Away luggage, which I feel like is always like on the top of everybody's when they're talking about like the new kinds of companies. They would not exist without Instagram. No, you know, like
they built the hype first, and then
and I feel like there's so much, and I think it's a two-sided thing. It's like you can like build an audience that has nothing to do with like having like a store, you know, and then also just as like as an audience member watching something like Away suitcases or like freshly picked those moccasins, like you can see how somebody builds their business from this like grassroots effort online that makes you think like, oh, I could do that, you know?
Oh, okay,
you see the path clear.
Yeah, so I think there are both ways, but it's exciting. It's exciting to hear people speak about who are on the forefront of doing that, because I still think that there's so many people that don't understand that that's an option for them.
Yeah.
Like that you can.
I mean, I still look at that
you
stuff.
Can create it. Yeah.
I still look at all that stuff like Banjo, which I love that whole company. Like, because I always think like I would love to do like a product or merchandise or something like that, and it just seems so overwhelming. I'm like, I don't know how they know how to do it.
It's crazy. I'm not even creating products, but just even that world is
because it's I guess the thing for me with what the path that I chose or whatever is that it was just time. I was investing my time. Yeah. Like, you know, I built my own website and
you didn't have to find a manufacturer, distributor, like
no, like I didn't have to learn. Like I learned how to make
WordPress or
whatever
platform was, but
yes, there was no overhead.
Yeah.
So it's that overhead thing is very scary.
Yeah, because then you have to find funding, which means you have to get somebody to believe in your vision. Right. Which is hard, especially again when you're dealing with things that maybe certain generations or just mindsets can't wrap their head around. Like, how are you going to make money with that? And how, like, I don't understand. So to try to get people to buy in enough to support you emotionally, but then also financially, or to build up actual overhead projects.
Yeah. I don't know how you know about that.
Super hard. Which one of your platforms or kind of pages, because like we talked about, you have MommyShorts, you have MommyShorts Squad, you have Average Parent Problems. Yeah. Would you say that one of them has kind of taken off and been the most successful in terms of followers or even financially successful? And then are you surprised at which one it is? Or
yeah, I feel like it is kind of surprising. So Average Parent Problems is more of my meme account, and it is the largest one.
It has how many?
I want to say it's like 430,000 followers, and it gets
super similar to my Instagram.
And it gets a ton of engagement, and like the views on stories are crazy high, and and the likes are off the charts or whatever. Likes I hear are not going to matter soon, but that's a whole other topic. Okay. Likes are going to go away. I believe they're testing that. Yeah. Okay. But it's not the one that I sell the most. The one, like, it's not the one that I make the most money on. The one that I make the most money on is MommyShorts, because I think, and I've always said this, that that's the most valuable because it is me. It's a person recommending things, and it's like, you know,
you are the brand.
Yeah,
and
so
you've
it's like
built up years of
like the audience knows me, and if, like, you know, they trust me and what I'm recommending or selling or whatever. So that's still, I think that's where the so that was like an interesting thing, because I feel like with my blog I've been sort of trying to take it into a direction where there's more contributors and sort of like make it bigger than just me and my family.
Yeah. But
there's also that question, like, do people even care about that stuff anymore, or do they just want to follow a person and be like personally invested in your family and what you're doing, and do they care about a blog that's more general? I don't know. That's like that's a question. But so what I ended up doing is creating MommyShorts Squad, which I feel like at the moment I'm super excited about that because it's the newest one.
Yeah.
But that's sort of a place where I can talk about more issues that matter to me, to highlight families that I think are going through like really extraordinary things, or, you know, families that are going through like really normal things, but just to sort of like make everybody feel like we're all going through some of the same stuff.
Yeah. Connection one.
Yeah, and that seems to be filling a void. I think that, I don't know if it's like a void in online in general, or it's just like in my personal online space. I think the other thing that I'm trying to do with it is, again, focus more on moms than I am on kids. Like, I feel like MommyShorts, when it started, was very much about like, I'm not gonna say cute babies, because I was always like, we're not about cute babies, or about like, you know, funny photos of babies.
Yeah,
but
like
everything
baby
was
mugging
and like the epic baby hair and all that stuff. It was always like cute pictures of kids. Like, I want to see the mom.
Yeah.
Now that's not who I am online anymore. It's like when I look at my feed and I see just pictures of babies, like, I want to like unfollow those people.
Yeah.
Like,
not that your babies aren't cute.
Yeah,
but
they're adorable, but they make me sad almost because I don't have a baby anymore.
I know. And then
so I'm really interested in following. I want to know more about the parents. You know, I like seeing the photos.
What they're doing.
Yeah, I like seeing photos of moms. I like seeing. I want to know more about like raising big kids. So I find it really interesting, and I think it's just like at the stage that people are at. Like the majority of people on Instagram right now, I feel like are, or at least the majority of the people I follow are people who just became moms. So it might be like someone who's in fashion or someone who's in beauty. They already have a brand, and then they like introduce a baby into it, you know, which is interesting because that's very different from like where we were, because we were just posting pictures of our kids. Yeah. Whereas like now you have people that they've already have this whole Instagram space, and then they're like weaving this baby in, you know? Yeah.
And I sometimes am like, oh, everything's much cuter when you like have a baby and Instagram is already a thing. Like, you're like, so posed. Whenever I swing between being like jealous and then being like, no, it's cool. My kids have like, you know, vomit, like dark photos.
I've gotten to this place where like some of those photos, like they start making me like angry, you know, like because they're so perfect.
Like, it's like a I just lost the word. Top lay? No, not top lay. Flat lay.
Oh yeah, the flat lays.
But like,
all the moms,
you know, that you're like, it's like perfectly shadowed and angled,
and like they're wearing like crocheted onesies, and you're like, where do you even get those? They're like in the sink with all the flowers and stuff. And it's like, who does this?
No, my kids' baby pictures.
No, I mean, I even laugh looking at like Mazzie's baby pictures compared to Harlow's, because Harlow, I was sort of like positioning things for Instagram a little bit more, and like art direction a little bit, not to the extent that I see it now, but definitely more than
gradations.
Mazzy.
Well, I have UB because I have an 11-year-old, so his photos are literally still from a camera. Camera, and they're like actual printed out photos in an album, and then the other two, their baby books, are basically chat books made from Instagram photos.
Yes, for sure.
So, like,
so beyond the people who have personal accounts that have you know, the most adorable babies and this like setups that I can't even imagine that's real. There's also like a lot of Photoshop I've noticed, but that's a whole other story. Okay. I feel like people are like face tuning the baby's eyes, which makes me really angry.
Like I can't even handle that. I don't.
You can tell.
I don't have Facetune or whatever. And so like, but you can tell when adults do it, and even that makes me like,
Yeah, it's like, come on, we know that you have like a line.
Your eyes are not like Icelandic blue or whatever.
Yes. Yeah, I've been noticing that on like baby photos, and I'm just like, that's so messed up.
That's
you
weird.
know.
That's creepy actually.
But the other thing that I've noticed is a lot of the mom accounts that are becoming popular are it's like, I feel like they're treating motherhood like it's like that moment that you have a baby. Like it's all like pictures of like people who just had a baby and what like how, and sort of talking about like and it's they're powerful photos and they're all talking about like I'm a warrior or whatever, like just like having gone through birth, you know. And I look at that, I'm just like, that is such a minuscule part of motherhood
that was headed your way.
Yes, I'm like so I feel like so many of the accounts now, they're like, even the New York Times, like they just launched their a new parenting initiative, and it's geared towards new moms. It's like and they say that, you know, it's like,
not for like older. So yeah, I'm like
out of the I'm like aged out of
not who they're like aiming their focus on. So that is interesting that then that makes you be like, okay, so not only do I have this need, but clearly like if we aren't in the spotlight, that doesn't mean we aren't as important, like the moms of older kids.
I think
we need somebody to kind of pull that group together and
but it's interesting because you can't, a lot of that stuff is like the things that you can't really discuss.
Yeah. So
it becomes kind of complicated, and it's also, you know, I think the people who are online, like I have to imagine that the Times and these other accounts that are doing this, it's because that's who's looking for this information.
Yeah.
And for something to identify with and to follow are new moms, the same way that like they're targeted by brands, because that's when that's when you're like changing a lot of your purchase decisions.
Yeah.
Whereas we're a little bit more set in our ways once we have kids this age.
Yeah.
So I understand it from like a target perspective, but as someone who's still talking,
it's like, hello, like I'm still is the mic on?
But like also just trying to figure out like what direction I'm headed in. I'm not having any more kids. So you sort of have to figure out like, okay, so I still think that this part of parenthood is super interesting, if not way more challenging than the beginning.
Way more complex then.
So how am I continuing to talk about that, and are people still interested in hearing about this stage of parenthood? Yeah,
and then do you bring in like parenthood and working and trying to like do all the social media, and then at a certain point we're also dealing with, personally anyway, like the aging, like personal aging, and dealing with like health of like I need to like be focused on taking care of myself and all this other stuff, and I'm still trying to keep up with like the young people just having babies and looking like it's all perfect because they already had their career and their house, everything else set first, and then they had a baby. Whereas I feel like I was kind of scrambling through all of it. And so like we're hitting a new wave of like, okay, I'm hitting parenting. I don't know who to turn to talk about with this other than like close friends. But
I'm gonna plug my Facebook group now. So I have this Facebook group called Remarkably Average Parents, which I feel like, you know, initially when I created it, it was also like sort of a place for kids of like 5 and up. A place for parents with kids of like 5 and up to go and talk about these things that maybe you couldn't talk about so publicly. But I feel like now it's been probably like 6 months since it's been up, and it's been growing. And it does feel like it's sort of coming back to like a little bit of a lot of people talking about toddler stuff, you know. But there's a ton of people in there with kids of all different ages. But that feels like it, and I think like groups in general now feel like sort of a safe space to talk about things more than like publicly posting on a blog.
Because it's somehow more intimate, but you're private because it's not necessarily.
We're always like reminding people, we're like, just remember, like, I know we're in a private group, but there are like 9,000 people, you know, like
reading this. That old friend from high school might be.
Right, I know. I mean, I already feel like I can't talk about a lot of things in there. That like that was the point of it initially, and now I'm like, I have no idea who's following this anymore.
So,
but it does it's a great group of people if you want to join.
I'm part of it. It is great.
Yes,
it's great. And people try to be. I think people do their best to not be judgmental there.
Yes.
Well, that's like that's the point of it, but it's still just because it's a group of 9,000 parents.
And it's
mostly
interesting
moms.
to have to like go in the group of people because content will get recorded and you're looking at it, you're like, okay, I understand this is like an extreme opinion, but is it like, is she offending anybody?
Yeah.
Or, you know,
so you're basically moderating.
Yeah, it gets tricky.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like not everybody knows like what's behind the scenes. Like sometimes we'll have to erase something because of something completely different than you might think it got erased for. And then people are upset. They're like, oh, like you're trying to like stifle my voice by doing it. And like, no, we had no problem with what you posted there. It was like then the thread kind of went in this crazy direction, and you know, so it's like, I don't know, or like if there's like no self promotion, so it's like if it's a topic that, you know, if you're like, I don't know, there's all these tricky things that happen that like we have to make a call on whether we take it down. It becomes very complicated. Yeah,
and it's literally like a different job than what you kind of originally signed up for, right? Like you're like, okay, I'm a blogger, and then obviously I have these Facebook pages or Instagram pages because that all comes with it, and all of a sudden you're a moderator.
I know.
Like
we have a
different job.
There's a few moderators of the group that like they are amazing, and I can't believe that they like are willing to spend the time to like break this down and figure it out. Like it's a lot of times like I'll check it at the end of the day, and I'm like, they're all like, there was like 10 dramas that happened that I didn't even know about. And I'm like, wow, you guys are amazing.
And you just like broke that. Yeah. So, do you feel like because as much as it's like awesome and inspirational and exciting to, like we talked about so much, like create your own career, make it exactly what works for your individuality and personality and your strengths, and to create some flexibility with work-life balance, like all of that. But do you find that because every time you are taking time away from work, like when you're, like you were talking about with Mazzy, that you have to explain, like, okay, I do want to be able to pick you up all the time and do all these things, but it means I'm taking away from my own work and my income. Do you think that makes it harder for you to make time for self-care, or are you still good about fitting that in? What does that look like to you?
I mean, like 2 years ago now almost, I did make a decision to start working out again. I hadn't worked out since like before Harlow was born, so it was like 5 years of like nothing, and that has been, and I feel like the reason I did that was it was a friend of mine from school and sort of convinced me to like, that she wanted to like, she wanted to work with me. She's a trainer, Zen Girl Fitness. I'm gonna plug her. And I almost think I did it more as I'm like, okay, like it's an opportunity to become more friendlier with her. Like we had just sort of, she was a new mom friend, and it's a good content opportunity. Yeah. So I think I kind of looked at it that way a little bit, and then that ended up being like best thing. Like it really just. I knew, like, I couldn't imagine finding the time for it, but I think because I sort of thought of it as like a content opportunity, made it easier, and it really was like the best thing that I did for myself, like, and probably one of the only things that I did for myself, like self-care wise, in recent years. And so now I was right; it is a huge time suck, but valuable, but really valuable, and I will always I will always make time for it now.
Yeah. So, I mean, I kind of agree. Like, I understand exercise being like self-care because I try to do the same. I feel a little less like excited about it typically, like unless I have, but I just feel like whatever it is that makes you feel like, okay, I'm spending like some minuscule amount of time on making me feel good and feel healthy and feel better, feel like mentally better, all of that. And so in terms of like other types of self-care, that's part of what I'm hoping Pom Vida is going to be for a lot of people, and not just working moms, but all types of people, that like reminding yourself that, okay, so for example, for moms, like when I got pregnant, most mothers I speak to say like, when I got pregnant, I changed what I ate. I changed how, I realized, I probably shouldn't be having that because it was about keeping the baby healthier. And then once you're done, producing babies, to kind of keep that mindset of like, okay, so if those things weren't great for my child, like maybe I should make decisions for myself that are also like show self-worth, of whether it's like making time to exercise or being like, maybe I shouldn't be using, this type of hair product or something, or this type of nail polish, whatever it is that's like maybe not great. So, or just even making time for a facial, making time for something that's just about feeling better after. So one of the products I brought for you to try today is a hand cream, Yasu. The professional YouTube thing. It's not working for me.
No.
But so it has some safer ingredients or it's very mindful ingredients. So all super healthy jojoba oil, evening primrose, shea butter, coconut oil, and olive oil is the main ingredient because the founder of this is a woman, Terry, who's from Greece and wanted to have the kind of natural products that she had there in the United States. So she created this, but it's not like hippy dippy natural,
right.
You know, like it also will completely make your hands like soft and young.
Yeah, I'm gonna take off my rings.
Yeah. So, and this is good because they have aroma free or their natural aroma one, which is this one just has like a slight lemon smell to it. So and the packaging is also very unisex. So I feel like it's something men can easily use too. And your kid, like the other thing that I love about all these products is that I never have that like pang in the back of my head, like when I let my kids borrow something of mine, or or some of it gets near my face, but it was really for my arms. Like I don't ever have a pang of like, oh, is that maybe not good? You know, like it's always like, no, everything's basically edible and like fine for you, so it doesn't matter where it goes or on you. But so I started trying to do stuff like this. Even before I started Pom Vida, I started trying to like leave a hand cream in my purse or like actually put on lipstick. I like things that I was not taking. I mean, I was for several years when my eldest was a baby, I was like washing my face with baby wipes at night. Like literally spending zero time and money on myself. So thinking about these things is
I know, I'm bad at washing my face. I use the Neutrogena
wipes.
I'm sure you could tell me
such
bad
a sucker
for
I'm not going to bash any brand,
okay.
but I will say that I was completely doing the same thing. I mean, just whatever was easiest, whatever I could wipe off, like I just wanted easy.
Right.
And I'm really trying as I now have more of a career and as my kids are older to be like, I also have value and deserve the time of like focusing on what I'm putting on my body, not just in my body. Like actually taking time to also once I started seeing more wrinkles, I was like, oh, I should be like moisturizing and like paying attention to which oils. Oh my gosh, yes. I can give you all that because it's amazing like what it can do. Like,
I feel like I want to show you all my products and be like, is this okay?
We can do like I won't publicly trash any brands because I really don't want this to be like they are toxic and horrible. Like it's just they are what always existed and like and we always like that was the norm, but now there are other options out there. So
it's so interesting because I feel like I started like a facial skincare routine like pretty young. And it's amazing that like I don't know what made me start that or who got that through me. Yeah, but I do feel like it must have made it like a difference. I think also because I'm not a huge fan of the sun. Yeah. So like I'm the person who's like, where's the shady spot? Amazing. You know? Yeah. So that's one thing I always tell to Allie, the 24-year-old I work with. I'm always like, wear sunscreen on your face like every day. Like there's no greater thing that you can do for yourself. And it's like
so true.
And sometimes it's like you're putting like
zinc sunscreen, not chemical sunscreen these days.
So that's my dermatologist told me that. But like there's two kinds of sunscreen. One like is like it
one's chemical and one is
one is like actually a shield. Yes. So I use the barrier shield, whatever.
Because not only is it so much, I mean there have been so many articles now, so I feel like I can kind of bash sunscreen more than like some of the other skin because it's like absolutely widespread. Not as seen as like deodorant now that everybody can admit. Like you shouldn't be putting aluminum under your arms. You shouldn't be putting the chemical sunscreens on your skin, and it's also killing the reefs, the ocean reefs. So it's like.
So what do you use on your kids? What sunscreen?
So I use Babo Botanicals. I use some California Baby. I use Tropic Sport, and then Think Sport. Yes, I mean they are, and they are. I just trialed on camera Tropic Sport yesterday, and it like will rub into any skin.
Is there any spray sunscreen that you can use?
That and this is so funny. I was at the pool the other day, and I said to my husband, like, I think, I'm gonna have to choose one of the spray sunscreens because you just see every single mom at the pool.
It's so easy.
It's so easy. I know. So it's not the ideal, it's not the best for our planet. But when you're a mom of several kids and they're young and they're trying to get in the water, I understand in that moment you're weighing it.
It's like sending them to camp in the morning, and
they're
you're rushing and you just have
exactly.
I take my kids outside and I'm like, okay,
yeah. So I understand. We do stick on the face,
yes,
and spray in the butt. I understand. So then I also want this to be something that is realistic and manageable. If I was just about to bash goop, but if I set some unrealistic standard, or if anybody does, you're never gonna do it. So to try to be work it into your life in ways that are manageable, and then you'll see it'll actually grow incrementally. But Babo Botanicals has a spray that is my favorite so far that does rub in and is easy and
That's so the other thing I think with kids, because for some reason it's I use so much more sunscreen on my children than I put on myself. I put it on my face, but I'm probably not as good about my body.
Yeah.
But my body is not seeing as much sun as theirs is during the day. But I feel like you go through them so fast, so you don't want to buy something too expensive either.
So honestly, my favorite for that reason is Tropic Sport. Which the other thing is that a lot of these brands are marketed towards babies and children, and they are great for them. But once you're buying clean sunscreen, you can even use the Tropic Sport, Think Sport that aren't marketed for a baby, but it's the same exact formula as they also have a baby version.
Oh, really?
It's the same formula. Yeah. So you can use any of them because they're just zinc, and then they're clean, so they're not putting all these other additives in there. So the Think Sport the Tropic Sport has a travel sunscreen thing, and then you can buy a huge kind of pump thing, and so you can refill it. Okay. And so that it's just, and the pump I feel just makes it easier. So it is expensive, but you're buying this huge quantity, and
I'm gonna look into it.
Yes. So I won't even put all of that on there because I was just supposed to be highlighting this. I want it to be more no, I love talking about it, but I don't want this to be. So my main last question for you, I'm sorry, two actually. Okay. So one, do you have kind of a mantra or a saying or a motto, something that you kind of repeat to yourself in those moments where you're having any self-doubt or questioning moving forward? Because you have to kind of each day decide to keep moving forward as opposed to a job where you're showing up and you're working for somebody else, because you have to kind of keep the momentum going yourself. Yes. Do you have something you kind of remind yourself of or say to yourself to do that?
Do I have a mantra that I repeat to myself? I don't know that I
a motto, something you just kind of remind yourself that this is why you need to just keep going even when it's
I feel like
scary.
The place where I doubt myself the most is as a mom. It's not work related. So I think that telling myself you love your kids, you're a good mom, you're doing the best you can, I feel like that's the kind of thing I'm trying to tell myself, more than work motivation. I feel like I'm very motivated.
Very motivated and confident.
But I'm always worried. I have a ton of guilt, about being a working mom, even though it's not really an option, And I'm always questioning and doubting some of the things that I do as a parent. I feel like sometimes I can be too lax, but then when sometimes I feel like I give in too easy, but then when I try and be strict, I feel so awful, Yeah. So it's I don't know. I have a tougher time in that area. So I think what I try and remind myself is you love your kids so much, you're trying the best you can, that ultimately they're going to feel that and be okay.
Yeah. I always say any parent who's stressing or sad or concerned about whether or not they're doing a good job parenting, it's probably a really good parent.
The first step to being a good parent is caring if you're a good parent.
Then that means your kids are going to be okay, because there are some that are not worried about it.
Yeah.
Maybe you should think about it. So, and then what would you, if you had one piece of advice for somebody who was trying to navigate this himself and figuring out how can I make something work for me, career and life balance wise, and should I just do it or not, or should I just hold back? What would be your one piece of advice?
I always feel like as a parent, it's like, unless you're doing something that you're passionate about, there'll be no time for yourself, you know? So to me, it's like, because I'm doing something that I really love, I'm sort of like getting to like cross off two birds with,
Kill two birds with one stone. Never sounds good though, so I'm like killing birds.
But I'm getting to kill two birds with one stone. The fact that like my me time is also me working. Otherwise, I really don't think I would have time for myself.
That's actually really good. I mean, it's a similar version of like they say, find what you love and you'll never work a day in your life, which is a little
which is not exactly true.
It's not really true. You're also still working.
There's also
challenging moments.
There's also the other side of that where they say, if you do what you love, you'll always be working or something. Yeah. There's some other like reverse to that.
If you don't love what you do, you'll always work. But if you love what you do, you'll never stop working.
or I can't remember the way it was phrased.
You work more hours when you work for yourself and you love what you're doing.
Yes.
But at least you're happy and fulfilled in those moments.
Feels emotionally fulfilling.
Yes, instead of like clocking in and clocking out and then navigating. Where do I find personal joy and fulfillment also? Yeah.
I think it's some of those like tougher moments, like when I got laid off from my job and I thought it was like the worst thing that could possibly happen.
Yeah.
It ultimately was a huge opportunity, you know. So I think, and I can say this with like almost 100% certainty, I would still be at that job and probably pretty miserable, you know, if I hadn't been like sort of forced out. Yeah. So, and not that I was miserable with the job at the time, but I think I was sort of questioning a little bit, what was important. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's like,
I think navigating work-life balance isn't as complicated as it is when you're working for yourself. Yeah. It has so many more opportunities and room for making it work than when you're working somebody else's system on somebody else's time and somebody else's pay system. And
I think I also didn't know what I was missing.
Yeah.
Back then, I was like, to me, it was like I was on this like career path and not really thinking about what that meant for my life, you know, what I was doing. So I didn't, because I had no other perspective on it. So now seeing like, you know, what I've been able to build and how that's really like helped me be with my family, I can see that was an amazing, that I would have missed out on a lot.
Yeah. So knowing what you know now about what you've created and where you are, you would not go back to.
Yes, I would.
You would absolutely choose this path.
I would absolutely choose this path, but I was forced to find a path. I didn't do that on my own.
I still think, like we talked about, there are lots of things that happen in life that you can choose to see the opportunity in it or not. So finding those moments where you see an opening to try a different path and actually trusting your gut to try it instead of continuously beating your head at this one. Yeah. Because you could have just kept trying to find new work. Yes. In that field.
Yes.
But so trying this other path, I think, is kind of the key too. And that anybody I speak to that has done that has the same answer of looking like there are all these challenges. Yes, it's very different. You're creating your own system, but I would never choose that other path knowing what I know.
And even if like you fail at it, at least you have that experience to be like, well, I went down this road, I saw where that brought me, and now I feel like kind of comfortable and no regret going back, you know? Yeah. Whereas if you don't try something, then I don't know.
And you have resentment.
Yeah.
It's like get married at 14. You just never know.
Right?
You need to see what is out there so you don't have resentment when you're 50 against whatever you're tied to. So. Well, thank you so much. Do you have anything else you'd like to add? And I can edit it in. But
no, this is great. It was really wonderful talking to you.
Great. Well, thank you so much for doing this and telling everybody about what it's like kind of behind the scenes to be in a self-created career and position that has gained so much success and what that really looks like. So thank you. And thank you for watching Pom Vida Invigorators. And I hope that you have been additionally inspired to go out and use your life and time wisely to go make yourself happy and spend time on what is important.